I need to lift with the knees. I need to lift with my knees. 1, 2, 1, 2. So this project, like many others, just started with a casual trip to the hardware store, and I saw this nice piece of bamboo and immediately thought, well, TV stand. So here I just started by measuring out and making sure that I get the right measurements, because I wanted to cut out a 45-degree angle um, on the joining sides to make sort of a mitered waterfall cut on the sides. And that's what you see me do here. So I'm just making sure that I am millimeter perfect, because I really don't want to mess this up. And once I was done with the top bit, I then put the two supporting sides on my workbench and just went to town with the circular saw. And what this enabled me to do is just to match that 45-degree angle that I have on the top bit with the ones that are on the sides. And once I cut that out, I measured them together just to see that everything is the same size so that it won't be skewed to one side. Once that was done, I then pulled them together, the top and the two side pieces, and orientated them in the right order to make sure that I get the nice seamless finish grain on each side, and prep them for dowels. Now after doing that rather, I then started gluing up and putting glues in the dowel holes and just applying the glue. What you see me do here is gently massaging in the dowels into the spots, as well as put the frame on the side as well. Took a bit of convincing, but eventually it snapped right into place and allowed me to sort of close all of those gaps. Put a little glue on the seam, then followed that up with some fairy dust, which is used to sort of close up the seam and make sure that it's seamless and there are no gaps between the joints. Then I went over to the other side and essentially did the same thing, rubber dub and hammer, and then fit the side onto the edge. Now with this one, as you can see, this one is not so great. I really messed up a bit here, and this is a mistake I had to correct later. Once that was done, I then moved it inside just to sort of get the scale of what it looks like with the old one. What you see me do here is essentially cut some pieces to make a ladder frame or H-frame, which will serve as support for the underside. Now what this does is essentially help with the structural integrity of the whole thing, because miter joints aren't exactly the best joints structurally. So I'm adding these support pieces to the bottom and underside, as well as to the sides of the cabinet, of the unit. Once that was out the way, I then went over to do the inner cabinet, and I'm using this MDF panel from PG Bison that has, I think it's called iceberg white as a color. And what you see me do here, just take my clamps and clamp them into place in order to make the cabinet, right? And these corner clamps really help with that task. Once I did the bottom piece, I then went on to do the top piece as well. Once that was done, I then flipped it over on its side and just made sure that everything aligns. Took my square and sort of drew a 16mm line across, just so that I know where to drill and screw as a sort of a guide. Then I went to town with my drilling pilot hold so that the screws don't hurt the MDF and expand it where I'm using them. And this is essentially because all that extra material from the screws needs somewhere to go. So if you don't make a gap for it, it will create the space and you get bulges in your joinery. Then I did that, used my screwdriver to sort of screw everything in, made sure that all the screws were flush so that nothing really sticks out. Again, this has to be millimeter perfect because I did not leave any tolerances. Somehow I eventually figured out that I can use my drill as a screwdriver, and this is what you see me do here. And using the drill to sort of drive in the screws into the pilot holes that I had made, and this essentially made my work so much quicker, because with manual one there was a whole lot of exercise. Now once that was done, I just took my manual screwdriver and just tightened everything to make sure everything was flush. With that one out the way, took box number 1 in and got to work on box number 2 and box number 3. Again with the drill, making easy work. Flushing it out with my screwdriver there. Like I said, when I made the frame, I made a little error, and you will see here when I tried to install the support brackets, it really had a bad flex on it, and that just told me that I needed to redo it. So I then flipped it over, got a couple of saws and got between that gap, and you can see that it's big enough for me to sort of just cut through everything there. Eventually I got that done and started cleaning up with some sandpaper and some, I used everything here. I used the chisel to sort of scrape away the glue without really cutting away too much material, and the water just helped to make the glue a little bit looser. The water just helped to make the glue a little bit looser so that I can scrape it away cleanly, as cleanly as possible. I then screwed in new dowel spots and then took it over to the table, dry fitted it this time, and did my whole blue tape glue squeeze protection, and put some glue on the wood, spread it evenly, some more glue, and use the dowels again. And this time I made sure to get it perfectly right so that I don't have to redo it again. And once that was done, I clamped the two sides and put some fairy dust and make sure that everything was good. With that, I just re-measured the inside to see how much millimeters I had lost. It wasn't a whole lot, but I had lost some. So I went on to make the holes for the wheels on the H-frame, or the support ladder frame for the bottom support, and I used a plunge router to achieve this. I made multiple passes just to sort of get the depth in the line. I really just took my time with this. And once I'd done that with the router, I then took my chisels to sort of just clean up those holes to make sure that they're just as square, as rectangular, or as straight as possible. Once I was done with the H-frame, I did the very same thing on the side pieces, which is the exposed bamboo. But I then decided, and what I did with those was the very same thing, where I just insert them right in the center of that thing, of the side piece, and then chiseled away again just to clean up those edges, to get some nice straight edges, to give it that professional artisanal look. I also then did the back one with that. Then went over to the other side, did the front and the back one as well. Finally, when all of that was done, I then moved over and installed the wheels onto those holes so that I could start moving this around easily. Once that was done, I then started the assembly process by screwing in the bamboo to the ladder frame. So you can see how it all now comes together. Did the same thing on the other side. And you can see that to the front of the TV unit, I added these sort of like brakes so that I can sort of anchor it whenever it does not need to move. Once that was done, I then friction fitted the inner cabinets and just started getting the alignment right. And what's important here is that I really wanted the doors to be flush with the frame from the outside, so I just needed to push them just a little more than 60 mils on the inside, just so that I get a nice clean edge. The hammer really helped me massage everything into place. Now, the little millimeters that I lost when I redid that glue joint meant that I had to remove just a little bit of the edging on this finished trim piece, just so that it fits. And after doing that and confirming that it fits again, I then used my glue and fairy dust again on the corners on the outside this time, just to make sure that when you approach it, when you see it, you just see a nice continuous edge and not cut marks or join marks. Do not ask me about this technique. All I know, it works. How I learned it, leave me alone. Just doing stuff here. Once that was done, I then got to installing the hinges. Now I'm using soft close hinges for this, and this is because I just wanted it to feel very nice when I close it and not make a noise if ever I or anyone else tried to slam it. After drilling the holes for that, cleaned the surface up, and then got to work installing the actual hinges on there. So I screwed everything in, and once that was done, I then went to dry fit the top again, and then position the doors from the floor where they need to be, to make sure that everything is aligned and seamless, and make any minor adjustments that I needed to make at this point. Clearly, I use loyalty cards because that's the only use they have nowadays, to hold stuff up, and just make sure that I got an equal gap both on the right, the left, and the center for the top part. Once those measurements were done, then I got to work drilling in the cabinet onto the frame, as well as installing the hinges. Now, once that was done, I then just installed an extra support piece on the back to sort of hold up the top in the center, because there's little support on the center. So what this will help me with is ensuring that it doesn't bow on the center and become not straight anymore. Glued it up, screwed it in, and then flipped it back to its final position. And it was time for the top to go in for one last time. So wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Left, right, shoop. There it goes. And once everything was measured precisely, I then drilled in and secured the top piece onto the cabinet. And it's really starting to come together. With that done, the bottom leg pieces where the wheels are was now an exposed piece of pine that I really wanted to blend in with the cabinet. So I put some contact glue on there, and I then used something that looks like edge bending, edge bending, whatever you want to call it, just to sort of cover it up and make it blend into the rest of the unit. Now you will notice there is a gap between the bottom and the cabinets. I made that effect simply because I want to end up installing a light diffuser, an LED light diffuser in that gap, just to add that extra flair. And once I was done installing the edge bending, took my box cutters and just snip, made sure everything's perfect on the inside, and that was almost the end of the hard labor. But wait, there's more. I needed to sand this piece down to then prep it for a finish. And after sanding it down, I used my special formulation of H2O Fafa to sort of just clean it up there. And once that was done, I then used silicone on all the gaps just to sort of get that seamless feel between the transition between the wood and the cabinet. So what this essentially does is that all these little micro gaps that appear between where the boards meet, it just closes that up. So when everything's taken off, you just get a seamless look, like it's all just one piece. And once that had dried, I then started removing the tape that was protecting the wood from the silicone and as well as the fronts. So all this blue stuff was essentially just plastic that was protecting the actual finish. Once that was done, I then removed the inner plastics, which were also protecting the finish on the inside, because it's the very same glossy iceberg white that's on the top. Once that was done, I just brushed off all the rough edges that I could see, then wiped it down with some mineral turpentine. And what this does is essentially clean away any dust that's latent on the wood and give it a good surface for the finish. Then I use this poly-based oil finish for the top, and what this actually gives is a nice velvety look, but also protects the wood from moisture. Not that I'll be putting this out in the rain, but better safe than sorry. Made sure I covered all the sides, all the edges, just to get that nice velvety finish. After applying the oil, I just wipe it down so that it doesn't leave any residue. It's essentially done now, and all that's left is for you to see what it looks like in the end. So I installed the doors and almost fall for some reason, and went to install door number 2 and door number 3.